Dear brothers and sisters, I welcome you all to hear and see this video message. Today we are going to see and pray for need of genocide prevention law in India. Content for this video I given in the description. You can go through and study. In 1946, the United Nations General Assembly passed a resolution recognizing genocide as a crime under international law, and then the Genocide Convention was unanimously adopted by the UNGA in December 1948. India, although a signatory to the 1948 Genocide Convention, which it ratified in 1959, has not yet enacted the law pursuant to it. India follows the dualistic system where it is necessary to pass a law in Parliament pursuant to the ratified convention under Article 253 of the Constitution to make it enforceable in the country. The Genocide Convention actually requires every country pass laws in its own country against genocide. So India is already violating the Genocide Convention by not having such a law. It is imperative to demand a legislation against genocide, which India is yet to enact even after more than 64 years of ratification of the Genocide Convention. In a study of 196 countries in 2020, including the 193 United Nations member states, it was found that 138 countries had legislation against genocide, but India did not. So the first thing, Indian government should pass a law that specifically outlaws genocide and then provides for ways to implement that law, including arrest of people who commit some of the acts of genocide enumerated in the local law and the international convention. People who try to incite genocide need to be arrested and put on trial for it. With many Hindu extremists who called for genocidal violence still roaming free and India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi maintaining a conspicuous silence, India in breach of its obligation to the Genocide Convention. Genocide is the most potent of all crimes against humanity because it is an effort to systematically wipe out a people and a culture as well as individual lives. A genocide begins with the killing of one man not for what he has done but because of who he is. Article 2 of the Convention defines genocide as acts committed with intent to destroy in whole or in part a national, ethnic, racial or religious group, as such a killing members of the group. Number 2, causing serious bodily or mental harm to members of the group. Number 3, deliberately inflicting on the group conditions of life calculated to bring about his physical destruction in whole or in part. Number 4, imposing measures intended to prevent birth within a group. Number 5, forcibly transferring children of the group to another group. The Indian Penal Code does not have any equivalent of acts committed with intent to destroy in whole or in part a national, ethnic, racial or religious group. A crime like genocide and such associated crimes can't be dealt with the same procedural and substantial laws that are created for regular crimes. This points to the need for legislation against genocide in India. Article 4 of the Genocide Convention makes even constitutionally responsible rulers and public officials responsible for the crime committed. Incorporation of this article in Indian legislation could significantly help in reducing current substantial and procedural hurdles, as it is extremely hard to try public officials for genocidal crimes committed with their involvement and complicity. Article 5 of the Genocide Convention makes the obligation to enact appropriate legislation giving effect to the provision of the Genocide Convention and in particular providing appropriate penalties for person guilty of genocide. Article 6 of the Genocide Convention makes individual charged with genocide through a competent tribunal. India ratified the Genocide Convention on August 27, 1959. Article 51, Clause C of the Indian Constitution 1950 directs the state to foster respect for international law and treaty obligations. Article 253 empower the Parliament to make any law for the whole or any part of the territory of India for implementing any treaty, agreement or convention. However, India has made no efforts to enact a national legislation in the form of a Genocide Act which would effectively criminalize the offence of genocide. This willful abdication of the state responsibility for more than 6 decades has seen the 1983 Nelly massacre, the 1984 anti-Sikh riots and 2002 Gujarat massacres and the continuing struggle for justice within the inadequate conceptual frame of Indian law. Considering these facts, it is a grave lapse on the part of Government of India, which has to date not enacted any law in compliance with the Article 5 of the International Convention of the Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide 1948. Under the convention, a state that is signatory is bound to effectively act upon and legislate upon the intent of the legislation. Genocidal calls and acts are now become the new normal of the country and its culprits are freely moving. We cannot close our eyes to whatever is happening just because it is too awful. We as a whole community of justice loving Indians are required to work upon it at a war footing to bring to an end it. In this scenario, it is imperative to demand a legislation against genocide which India is yet to enact even after more than 64 years of ratification of the Genocide Convention. Although the creation of the law is not a panacea for all the ills on earth, it does help in fixing clear lacunae in the legal system. Ultimately, political will and voices of conscious citizens remain the most important tool in the fight against hateful and genocidal forces. Bible talks about enact the Genocide Prevention Act in India. In Proverbs chapter 24 verse 11 and 12. Rescue those who are unjustly sentenced to die. Save them as they stagger to their death. Don't hesitate to rescue someone who is about to be executed unjustly. Don't execute yourself by saying, "Look, we did not know." For God understands all hearts and He sees you. He who guards your soul knows you knew. He will repay all people as their action deserve. Amen.